to speak to a variety of different organizations.
My colleague,
I think it's very important for us to talk about this issue. I think there are a number of reasons. I mean, the fact that some of our leaders have stood in the way for people to get $15 an hour when they make $100,000 a year. I mean, we know our wages are too low in the city of Cleveland. And when you see leaders that are standing up and saying that we need to go to Columbus and we need to stop people from making $15 a year, that's a factor. When you look at the factor of the sense of urgency, I talked about it last night during the debate. I mean, as you know, I was the intergovernmental affairs officer for the San Francisco Housing Authority, and you're talking about a city that has way more when it comes to how much rent that has to be paid. But the Mayor Brown said that we are going to do something about public housing, and it showed from the top that we were able to do that. So when the leadership shows that this is a very important issue, you can solve this problem. And as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I will work to solve this problem.
Thank you. Candidate Kucinich.
Yeah, I don't have my video on. I just want to preserve power. We're getting kind of fluctuations in the signals there because of the storm. So at any rate, as a child, I actually had the experience of homelessness. For a while, my parents had a great difficulty finding rent as the family grew from 1 to 7 children. And there were times when we lived in a car where we were waiting to find a place to rent. There are a lot of reasons for homelessness. Some of the easiest to understand are people can't afford rent. They can't find rent for the size family they have. I know that personally. They could never put money aside to buy a home. That was kind of my parents' situation. They have a home and they lost their income, so they lost their home. Not being able to get loans from a bank to either have a home or to be able to keep your home. There are a lot of reasons, and I want to associate myself with Senator Williams' insight. That is that sometimes you have mental health issues that come into play that are very serious. And
thank you. We'll have to stop there. Candidate Kelly. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting. This is an extremely important topic. And I've been working on campaigns for a long time. And I just remember when homelessness used to be an issue in presidential elections and national elections. I don't recall hearing about it all in 2016 and 2020. But as to your question, I would say, what are the causes of homelessness? There are many. If I had to look at the broad strokes, there are mental health consumers that are not receiving the services that they need for whatever reason that make up a portion of our homeless population. Substance abuse leads to a number of our homeless citizens as well. Poverty, just lack of access to funds and the social conditions. And we're really making steps in everywhere, but the unsheltered homeless remains like the toughest nut to crack right now, the hardest problem that we all need to solve. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Jones.
Thank you so much for the invite. This topic hits home for me. As a child, we were unsheltered. We lived in the Salvation Army right off of 30th next to Tri-C. At the time, it was a shelter for women and children. When it comes to this topic, many people believe that, we bring up substance abuse and we bring up, mental health issues. But that's not always the case. My mom, matter of fact, being unsheltered can cause the trauma and can cause mental health issues and can cause us to become abused on substances. My mother, she didn't have any substance abuse issues. We just couldn't find a place to go. And the reason, to go to your question of the why, there's a lack of affordable housing in the city of Cleveland. And you have an increase of housing in a sense of, high cost housing, but not enough for those who just looking to have a place to live. So I'm really excited about this topic. And as mayor, what I plan to do is create an office, create a department for homeless services. I look forward to talking more about that.
Thank you. Candidate DeBello.
Thank you. I think it's 99% in the word homelessness. It's about homes. This is not people's fault, as Councilman Jones was just talking about. Homelessness is a choice by the city. It's a choice by the country, based off your policy priorities, your fiscal priorities, profiting politically, wanting to get reelected. And frankly, I'm a Bernie bro, right? Bernie talks about this, has talked about it a lot in both the last two presidential campaigns. We always throw responsibility onto the houseless themselves, right? But we got huge wage inequities, right? $15 minimum wage. I've suffered from that in Cleveland. We have slumlords where the houses aren't kept up, aren't made to stay habitable, lack of economic opportunities, and getting a job when you don't have an address. That's a stigma and just too many hurdles. I think it ties into the maximization of profits tied to land, the 15-year tax abatement. The tax abatement, as we have here in Cleveland, is going to make a few wealthy people wealthier, as opposed to spurring development where it would otherwise not happen. I want to stress where we're at right now in this country with the extreme wealth divide, which only projects to continue to worsen. We need to view housing as a human right? And push for that at the national level. And sure, that's up for constitutional interpretation, but on a human level, I consider it to be true. So as somebody working for the public good, I think housing is a human right, and we need to build more.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bibb.
I don't think we can have an honest conversation about this topic without talking about the macro structures that have led to homelessness in the city and in this country. And we got to talk about race. We know that roughly 80% of the folks that are in shelters for housing in 2018 were Black. And a large portion of folks that are getting evicted all across the city and all across this country are Black. And so until we eradicate those structural barriers and eradicate structural racism in public policy, we're not going to address this issue long term. Secondly, I would also say at the city level, we need to rethink exactly how do we have a more housing first approach and policy to support residents and our homeless population to be in a stable home that's of high quality and that's affordable. It's a shame that some of our policies call for a person to be chronically homeless for nearly a year before they can have a voucher to be in a home. That doesn't make any sense to me. What you've seen in Houston is that they've done amazing jobs of eradicating homelessness at the city level by making sure folks have an immediate access to a home versus creating these other barriers that exist in their respective city.
Great, thank you so much. We'll move on to the second question now. You have 90 seconds to answer this question. We know that systemic racism is a root cause of homelessness, leaving people of color disproportionately likely to experience homelessness and housing insecurity. This is evident in the fact that 84% of families experiencing homelessness in Cuyahoga County are Black. What concrete actions will you take to reduce the number of people of color who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity in our community? Again, you have 90 seconds. Candidate Reed, please.
Well, I think it comes down to building more houses, more affordable housing, having policies in place to deal with the homeless problem and the lack of affordable housing in the city of Cleveland. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. I mean, I mentioned last night that there has not been a new home built on the southeast side of the city of Cleveland in Ward 1 and Ward 2 in the last 4 years, while in other parts of the city of Cleveland, we're building homes to the sky. So, and you look at those homes that we're building to the sky, I think we talked about it last week on one of the forums that we had. The average cost of rent in the city of Cleveland is $1,100. The average wages in the city of Cleveland is living in poverty. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say on one end, we're going to build new housing on one side of the city. We're not going to build housing on the other side of the city. And you're going to have the low wages in the city of Cleveland. It just doesn't work that way. And that's why you got to have a mayor at City Hall that understands you got to make this a sense of urgency. People, our children, look at the aspect that almost 3,000 of our students that go to Cleveland Public Schools are coming from homeless families. 3,000 of them. But they're still going to schools in and around in the neighborhood. And that's why I said, and I will continue to say, sense of urgency, and this election is about neighborhoods. And as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I'm going to start to invest in neighborhoods in the city of Cleveland, because if we start investing in neighborhoods, we start building affordable housing, and we start helping families in our community.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Kucinich.
I think that many of us remember the striving, particularly in the Black community, that occurred in the 90s and in the early part of the aughts, if you call it that, of Black families own a home. And there was a much higher degree of home ownership back then than there is now. What happened? The subprime meltdown swept many thousands of Cleveland families up in the schemes that some Cleveland banks played, issuing no document and low document loans, which they knew people would have trouble paying back. And then that forced a wave of foreclosures, and people were out of their homes and they had no money, and they were thrown into rental situations or living with relatives or moved out of the area. We have to be cognizant of the fact. And how do I know this? I mean, I was chairman of a congressional investigative subcommittee that investigated this matter. And the city at that point should have filed a major civil rights suit on behalf of the Black community to be able to recover the wealth that was lost and pulverized during this banking scandal. Where are we now? There is a lack of opportunities for people to buy homes. During the COVID period, many people either lost their jobs or had a freeze on their wages. Now the American Rescue Plan is giving them some money, put some money in their pockets. But the truth of the matter is, people need solid incomes and jobs. That's one thing. Another thing is we need banks to be responsible for lending in communities in which they're making money. When I was mayor of Cleveland the first time.
We're going to have to call it there. Thank you, sir. Candidate Kelly, please.
Thank you. There is no one easy way to deal with the issue of homelessness and the underlying social factors that undergird it, mainly race and poverty. One thing that we can look at from a policy level is one thing that causes homelessness and causes poverty is eviction. And that's why I'm very proud to have sponsored and really led the charge to provide a right to counsel for low-income defendants who are facing eviction in Cuyahoga County, working with legal aid, working with United Way. We set up a system to prevent people from becoming homeless. And preventing people from becoming homeless is a giant step towards, is one of the factors towards ending it. We didn't just set up the right, we also put up money. We put up money to pay for legal defenses for people that were facing eviction. In addition to that, we put money into CHN Housing Partners to make sure that all of the support for eviction prevention, whether it's getting your utility bills paid, your rent, anything that might prevent eviction, we set up the infrastructure through CHN Housing Partners. So, this council has taken great steps in doing so, and I'd be remiss in not mentioning the Sisters of Charity Housing First initiative, which was really kind of like gave us the support to start this program, to work with legal aid, to work with United Way to get to where we are today. We're nowhere near done, but we are in a much better place in terms of preventing eviction.
Okay, thank you. Again, the question is, what concrete actions will you take to reduce the number of people of color who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity? Next up, candidate Jones.
Thank you so much. You know, as a councilman in an area that has the largest homeless population, the big thing for me was the lack of communication that I saw between the city and even amazing organizations like LMM, who are on the front line every day. You know, I had a chance to go to San Antonio for the National League of Cities, where they have an amazing organization called Hope Haven, where they truly show the collaborative efforts between police, mental health organizations, as well as many others. So what I will do, number one, is I will create as mayor, a department for homeless services. Number two, we want to, of course, increase more jobs. We all have seen that because of this pandemic, it showed us that we are all one paycheck away from being unsheltered. So this is not an issue that is isolated to one group of people. We all can have a chance to be unsheltered. We have to, as mayor, I will work with police, mental health experts, and social services and make sure that there is a coordinated communication, right? We have to understand what people are dealing with. And what I did was work with businesses in the area and let them know, just because you have somebody that's sleeping outside of your business doesn't mean that you just automatically call the police. You don't know their situation, you don't know their condition. We should have something else. So in this mobile crisis unit that I plan to create, not only will police come, but mental health experts, social emotional experts, trauma experts that can deal with this situation a lot better. So once again, I want to increase affordable housing. And listen, there's a product. As mayor, I plan to work with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. There's a product that you can have Section 8 and use Section 8 to build homes and to purchase homes. Many people didn't know that. I know my mother didn't know it. This is
Call it there, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Candidate DeBello.
Thank you, Professor. Theoretically, we're all going to build more affordable housing, but for concrete, I think Congressman Kucinich is right. Lending is a huge culprit, right, in the state of our place, how this city got built. We need a public bank going forward to solidify the social safety net, attack the wealth divide. Actually, Key Bank, right, back in 2017, rejected home purchase loans for moderate income Black borrowers at a rate of nearly 7-to-1. Compared with white borrowers at that same income level. Borrowers on the east side of Cleveland received 47% of loan dollars they applied for in 17, compared to 64% in the county overall. And 13% of home sales on the east side were supported by a loan, compared to 53% on the west side and a high of 83% in the outer suburbs. Those disparities grow even greater when you're talking about getting a home improvement loan. I would also use the bully pulpit to market land co-ops, right? And we want to publicly track community investment, the community reinvestment dollars.
Okay, great. Candidate Bibb?
Well, I'm happy that Councilman Reed shares my sense of urgency for this issue and many other issues that I've been championing across this campaign, because Cleveland can't wait. And we've had a culture of complacency for far too long in this city. And I want to build on my prior comments about what we need to do to eradicate the structural barriers that exist, particularly for people of color in the city as it relates to homelessness. Number one, we should be restructuring and retailoring our abatement policy to create more incentives to invest in more affordable and workforce housing that better support our homeless population. Secondly, we need to reevaluate at a city level, how do we have a voucher policy that prioritizes housing first versus allowing someone to be homeless chronically for nearly a year? That doesn't make any sense to me. We got to restructure that policy, and the city of Cleveland can lead the way like other cities across the country. And then thirdly, as I said, across this entire city as a candidate for mayor, I want to have a chief racial equity officer in my administration to look at every policy and every rule on the book to make sure we're dismantling these systems where the city can play a role of eradicating structural racism. We can lead the way by doing this with a greater sense of urgency, because indeed, Cleveland cannot wait.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you so much for the question. I think first I'll start off by talking about many of the families that I've been helping over the last several years who have lost their homes due to not being able to afford their property taxes. One person in particular, Miss Freeman, who lived down the street from me, owned her home since the early 1970s. And she got behind on her property taxes, and the county sold her property for almost nothing because she could not afford her property taxes. She was on a fixed income. Ms. Freeman ended up homeless. And there are several people within our community, African Americans, and I also have to include the whites too, that have lost their properties due to the unaffordability of the property taxes that we have in our community, and the fact that our taxes are about to go up yet again before the end of the year, from what I have been told. We also have to look at the fact that the city is sending letters to people, some members that people that I know personally, who have been behind on their water bill. And the state allows the city to sell your home based on the fact that you are not paying your water and sewer bill, and they can sell your home. That is leading to homelessness within our community. Simple things that we can correct as a city and a county. But I believe all of that falls down to the fact that we have the biggest wage gap in our community, the wage gap between Black people and white people in our community, the wage gap between people who have some form of higher education or higher training and those who have a basic high school diploma. Many people are being taken advantage of in our community because they don't have some type of certificate or training that will allow them to command a higher salary. And again, going back to the fact that our wages are so low in the city of Cleveland, yet our property taxes our rent is extremely high, that is causing homelessness in our community. And then when we go to the fact that we know people are homeless and we know people have nowhere to go. And when we talk about people who might need permanent supportive housing, you also have this thing called NIMBY, not in my backyard. I don't want that structure in my backyard. I don't want it in my community. Don't put it over here. So if everybody tries to go away from being around people who have fallen on hard times, where are these people supposed to go? Where are we supposed
All right, we'll have to call it there, ma'am. Thank you so much. Question 3, sorry, I'm rolling through this. We're keeping on time though. Question 3 is a 1-minute question. One of the most important things we can do when looking for solutions to homelessness is listen to people with lived experience. How do you plan to seek expertise from those with lived experience when creating policy? Candidate Kucinich.
Okay, thank you. Have been in recent years. I would definitely reach out on the streets as mayor to talk to people and engage them. I mean, I've done that my whole life because I realize what people go through, and I'd like to reach out and speak to the homeless and see if they want to engage in a discussion about what we might be able to help, how we may be able to help individuals, because homelessness isn't just about a group of people who aren't properly housed. Homelessness is also about individuals who have individual concerns, and we need to keep that in mind. We cannot stereotype the homeless, and so I'll reach out personally because it's a personal concern of mine, and I'll be happy to have people who have that experience as part of my administration. Because we want people who are not compassionate experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly.
Thank you. No candidate for mayor and no person has all the lived experience to govern in all the policy areas that he or she is going to be challenged to do. It is crucial that we seek the input, that they participate, those that do have lived experience, and all the major initiatives that we have undertaken going forward. For example, it was the input of those that actually lost a child that was most powerful and actually really spurred us to action and came up with the best policies. Same with lead poisoning. dealing with families that actually experienced it, hearing from families that actually experienced it, right to counsel when you heard from people that actually went through eviction. It's just got to be the way that the executive, the mayor of the city of Cleveland operates, and I intend to do so.
Thank you. Candidate Jones.
Thank you so much. I have that lived experience. This is such a important topic to me. And even though Black people tend to are affected by this more than others, this is a human issue. It's not just Black people that go through this. It's not just white people, Hispanic, Asian, African immigrants that come here. This is a human issue. You know, I didn't wait till the election to get a part of this conversation. I go over to the men's shelter who have a poetry night and go there and spend time and just listen to them, listen to their poetry and listen to what they have to say. You know, I just came back from Newark where I had a chance to meet with the mayor, Ras Baraka, and we went over this Department of Homeless Services. As mayor, I plan to develop a Department of Homeless Services that deals with this issue. And you have to work with organizations like LMM who are on the front line, who are experts and who are connected to those great people at the Cosgrove Center and Norman Hurst and Lakeside Building, on the men's shelter on Lakeside. The people who are dealing with this, they understand their pain and they also know the solutions. So once again, as mayor, I will create a Department for Homeless Services, and LMM and other experts around this issue will be at the table.
Okay, thank you. Candidate DeBello.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, Bashir, that was beautiful. You know, we complain about, right, our power goes out in this storm, our internet goes out in this storm. That's not comparable. You know what I mean? I don't have the lived experience. So, you know, those who know me know that I've been saying for years, public comment is a huge problem, right? We do want to appoint a cabinet position for homelessness, have liaisons. I think council hasn't wanted to hear people all night on whatever they want to talk about, whatever they want to tell us. But there are numerous organizations, numerous individuals petitioning, right? I petitioned with Angelo, the gentleman who sells the newspapers, my guy Bishop, right? There are numerous individuals who specialize in telling us how we need to direct policy and budgeting. You know, Frontline, LMM, Westside Catholic Center, you know, the people at Malachi, Salvation Army. There are tons of people ready to opine if we just give them the floor and follow their lead. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bibb.
This is one of the most important issues in this election. We've had leadership in the city that has aggressively denied the will of the people. And we need the next mayor to have real credibility and real honesty and real moral leadership to ensure that resident voice is embedded in every aspect of city government. To me, it's all about bringing government to the people. That's why, as the next mayor, I want to have mobile city halls and our libraries and rec centers, because it doesn't make sense for, you know, folks to get on 2 buses or pay nearly $10 an hour for parking to come meet with their city government. That's a damn shame. The other thing I would say is we need to make sure we're talking to residents beyond just an election cycle. The biggest thing I hear from voters is that I only hear from my politicians every 4 years, right? Voters want us to show up when it's not convenient. And that's why there's so much voter apathy in this city right now. Why is it that we have one of the lowest voter turnout rates in America? It's because career politicians don't understand and take the importance of resident voice day in and day out. That's a major problem in this election.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you. I think the best way to understand any problem that we have in our community, and specifically the homelessness problem, is to sit down and talk to the people who are dealing with the issue one-on-one. That's how I've always done things. So, like I talked about the family who was homeless. Okay, how did this situation happen? What red tape or what bureaucratic policy is in place that has caused you to be in this particular situation? And Justin Bibb was right. That family that I told you about that was living in their car, they worked in the car at a car wash. The county could not help them. Why? Because the family refused to go to the homeless shelter. Why? Because of the safety issues at the homeless shelter. So they were deemed not homeless. That's one of the issues. And then I will talk to the experts who deal with this every day. Cohio and associations like Cohio, churches who actually do missionary work in their church, and people who work in this industry on a regular basis. All those people know where the problems exist, and that's how we can work as a city to get rid of the problems that exist and helping people get to where they need to be, and that's with a roof over their head. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you very much. As a career public servant who worked for Mayor Willie Brown in San Francisco as the intergovernmental affairs officer for the San Francisco Housing Authority, that went from one of the worst public housing authorities in the nation to one of the most improved public housing authorities in the nation, we did that in 1 year simply by listening to the residents. So your question is apropos as it relates to how I'm going to do it. It's by listening to the residents in the city of Cleveland. That's why I say every Saturday, I am going to open up City Hall to allow residents to come down and talk to their mayor firsthand about the problems that exist in their lives. So when you're homeless, you're not going to have to go through some agency, some advocacy group. You're going to be able to come talk to me personally, because I learned in that 4 years of working as the intergovernmental affairs officer for the San Francisco Housing Authority, the way that you're going to solve these individuals' problems is listen to them and learn from them and be able to engage with them. And I say to you, as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I'm going to have an open door policy to the mayor's office so individuals can come and talk to me personally as a career public servant.
Okay, thank you. On to our next question. This is a 2-minute question. You'll have 2 minutes to answer this question. In recent decades, Cleveland has invested substantially in high-income housing, fueling gentrification and displacement, while much of our other housing stock remains aged, lead-ridden, and unprepared for climate change. Money from the American Rescue Plan Act alone nearly doubles the city of Cleveland's annual budget, providing an opportunity to push big, bold ideas. What are your top 3 priorities for using these funds to end homelessness and ensure that housing is affordable and safe for people with low incomes? Candidate Kelly.
Thank you. There are many ways that that these dollars can be used, and some of the specifics. I can't say my top 3 without saying that broadband would be a top priority. But we can also use this to remove blight and demolish vacant abandoned homes, and we can also use it to remediate lead poisoning and add to the Lead Safe Cleveland Coalition. Those are all things that I would intend to do with these dollars. And it is important that we act quickly. These dollars need to be expended by 2024. As much as that may seem off in the future, these things do come quick, but I think we need to prioritize those. So if you had to give me top 3, it would be, to answer your question, specifically be broadband, demo, blight removal, and for a Lead Safe Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Jones.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I want to make a point, Professor. I feel like I'm back in college. I want to make a point, Professor, that homelessness is not just about people who are living on the street. When my family was living with my auntie, we were homeless, even though we were sleeping on somebody else's bed. I didn't have my own bed until I was 16 years old. So homelessness is deeper than just when we see our family living on the street. The second thing is, number one, $514 million, $511 million, these numbers keep on changing. Number one, we need to leverage these dollars. We need to be able to bring in public and private partnership to turn $511 million to $5 billion with the right people. That's number one. Number two, we need to look at senior housing. We have a lot of seniors in my neighborhood and all across the city who are living in homes where roofs are falling apart, back porches are falling apart, bathrooms that need to be fixed. And as a result of it, their home that used to be worth this amount is now worth this less amount. And we have to work with the banks and their CRAs to make sure that they are investing better into the city. Banks also play a part in homelessness because they are not giving the resources to the very people who are in those neighborhoods. So leveraging the dollars, senior housing. The next thing I will focus on is affordable housing. Affordable housing. Once again, As mayor, I will work with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and really push those who are on Section 8 to use their Section 8 vouchers to be able to build homes and purchase homes. And lastly, it's not just about what we spend the money on, it's also how we spend the money. Every single dollar must be spent in an equitable way. With this money, we need to make sure that we are making sure that women-owned businesses are getting these contracts. We need to make sure that minority-owned businesses are getting these contracts, because with this money, we should be also be creating a new wealth base in the city. And we need to make sure that we are putting the funding into small businesses. These are my top priorities. And police equipment too. Police need better equipment to do their job, better training and cultural competency. Thank you.
Okay, candidate DeBello.
Dude, my guy Bashir is just stealing a lot of my stuff. He's exactly right? Like, we're not looking to spend $510 million. We're looking to create $1 billion, $1.5 billion, $2 billion. So the first thing would be the public banking, right? We've got to get low income individuals good faith, non-predatory lending. So that nest egg and the operational expenses that come up with that, we're going to start there, right? The second thing is we're going to ramp up the city's legal department and our public health departments. So you can't, legislation is hard, right? I'm an attorney, but I don't know every area of aspect of law, right? If we want pay to stay legislation, source of income legislation, not letting people do self-help on evictions, we've got to pay lawyers more than $47,000, hire a couple more. Our public health department needs huge upgrades to serve those inflicted with mental illnesses. And the third thing is I really want to build from the bottom up, like figuratively and literally. So I want to put people in these neighborhoods that the housing stock has not been improved or added upon to work of all ages, right? Teenagers, young adults, even middle-aged, maybe people re-entering from the criminal justice system, and teach them trades and skills, right? Let's build houses, pay them. Now you've got a background. Now you've got a background in siding, drywall, painting, carpentry, stuff that I can't do, right? So if the candidate says, I'm going to build more affordable housing, it's not going to be me that do it. But let us not contract it out, right? Let us put our 17-year-olds to work, creating meaning. This is a win-win-win-win-win, right? You've built more housing, affordable housing. You've developed a trade, a background. You've got money, right? That's spending power. And you get the work ethic and the networking that comes along with that. So those are the three things I would do.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bibb.
I would just say we should be using every cent of that money to build the most inclusive comeback in our city's history, because I highly doubt we're going to get a moment like this in the future. But before I get to how I want to spend the money related to the question, I think it's important to talk about my key operating principles. Number one, we should be investing and building on what's currently working right now all across our community as it relates to these core issues. Secondly, we got to make sure the investments are sustainable over time, that they don't create future costs for us when you think about our revenue outlook as a city, because we don't know what kind of financial headwinds we're going to see in the future. And then thirdly, how do we build capacity long-term to finally solve some of these structural issues that many of the other candidates have talked about? And that's kind of my guiding philosophy in terms of how I would spend money as the next chief executive officer of the city of Cleveland. But as it relates to your core question, the first priority I have is really about putting people and neighborhoods first. Number one, I want to use a large share of that funding to ensure that we can take some of these vacant lots and abandoned buildings with our land bank and make sure we are prioritizing Cleveland residents to buy those properties, buy that land, so we can increase the supply and diversity of affordable and workforce housing in our city. I think secondly, having a direct voucher program at the city level to better support our chronically homeless could go a long way to addressing on a near-term basis our homeless population with the city of Cleveland. And I believe we can partner with the county on that front. And then thirdly, I do want to commend this council and mayor on passing the right to counsel legislation. And as legal aid has recommended, I think we should expand that criteria beyond just 100% of folks that are at the poverty level, so that we can have more people in that program to keep them in their homes, given what's at stake right now in this community.
Great, thank you. Candidate Williams.
Since our 2008 recession, many homeowners have not realized the wealth that they have had in their homes since. And so sometimes when you don't have the wealth in your home, it's very hard for you to be able to take out a loan and fix up your home. So a few things I would like to do. Number one, I've been working with a lady who's been living in Cleveland since the early 60s. And she makes $2 too much in order to qualify for the Senior Homeowner Assistance Program at the city. So what I would like to do is leverage our financing and leverage the fact that the city of Cleveland puts millions of dollars in banks within the city of Cleveland, and use that leverage to require or ask the banks to give people who need assistance to fix up their home a loan. Now that loan or that grant can be a forgivable grant, or it could be paid back when that person sells their home. So number one, leveraging dollars for seniors and others who need assistance fixing up their homes that don't qualify for other programs in the city. Secondly, there are two that I know of lead organizations working in Cleveland to abate lead. They tell me that they need $99.4 million in order to abate lead in the city of Cleveland's homes. They're only asking the city for $17.5 million. I would give them that $17.5 million working with city council to help them leverage private and philanthropic dollars from other people to resolve the lead issue that we have in the city of Cleveland, which we know, based on research, is contributing to criminal justice and education issues for the people within our community. Secondly, I've already brought back $150 million from the state to address the issue of abandoned homes, tearing those down. I want to make sure that we also use those dollars to not only tear down those homes that need to be torn down, but rebuild those homes that can be saved, and then build affordable housing, working with experts in that community to do it. And then finally, we should be using those dollars from the American Rescue Plan to address the issue of property taxes. You mentioned the high income housing. Well, that high income housing is causing a lot of people who have been loyal to Cleveland to lose their home because of the high cost of property taxes. So I believe we should be capping property taxes for loyal and longtime residents of the city of Cleveland and help them stay in their homes and keep them from moving out of the city of Cleveland. That's what we can do with the money. Is one-time money, so we need to make sure we use it wisely. And I believe those things will help continue to build the city of Cleveland. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you very much. I want to say, first of all, thank God for the CARE funding that we're going to receive. But I also want to thank God for Congressman Lewis Stokes and Congresswoman Okar, who years ago put in place and got the Congress, and I know Congressman Kucinich knows this very well, the CDBG funding. See, because we could talk about this one-time funding, but the city of Cleveland is an entire entitlement city, which means that every single year we get CDBG funding to do two things. That's what this funding is for. And you know this, Professor. It is in place to eradicate poverty, blight, and the whole and that poverty and blight. Okay, so how is it that the city of Cleveland has been an retirement city that's been getting this money for 40 years, and yet the blight and the poverty has continued? So we can talk about the money that's coming in, thank God for the CARE money one time, but we get at least $20 million per year. So I can tell you my three priorities, and that's easy. And everyone on here will tell you that. But the main priority is when we get this funding from the federal government, we should be spending it where it should be spent and how it should be spent, and that is to eradicate poverty and blight. So I'm saying to you, as mayor of the city of Cleveland, that I am going to use that funding the way it's supposed to be used, to go into these wards and these communities and these neighborhoods. As I said, to this campaign is about neighborhoods. And if we get $20 million per year to eradicate poverty in our neighborhoods, we should be eradicating poverty and blight in our neighborhoods. So spend the money in the neighborhoods where it should be being spent, and stop spending it where it should not be being spent. And I'm saying to you, as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I'm going to spend the CDBG money to eradicate poverty and blight in the city of Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Kucinich, what are your top 3 priorities?
Top 3 priorities would be public safety, housing, and health. We certainly need more police to be able to protect neighborhoods against the siege of crime. We need police who are racially sensitive, constitutionally aware, and fully trained in the requirements of policing communities of diversity. Furthermore, it'd be a priority to build new housing. We have, as both Senator Williams and Councilman Reed have stated, deficiencies in the way the money has been used. We need to take advantage of the money that Senator Williams brought in, tearing down the homes, to clear the homes that need to be cleared, but to start thinking of building low and moderate income housing. My goal would be to see 20,000 units built. And that would not only create an opening so people could have a roof over their head, an affordable roof over their head, but would also help to address the problem of lead abatement and lead poisoning, which so many inner city children continue to suffer from. The need for building new housing is something that you can leverage with the financial community, city dollars, additional federal dollars, as Councilman Reed pointed out, and foundations and other nonprofits who are involved in improving housing opportunities. We also need to spend money on health. We have crying healthcare needs in our community, particularly with respect to the health of children, to the dental health of children. We need to make sure that our schools, the school system, is working with the city of Cleveland in looking at the health of each child,
family, and making sure the communication exists between the families and the city. What I have found from my own experience, that the greater the degree of poverty and social disorganization, the greater the lack of awareness to be able to access programs that are available to help. So we need to have an aggressive outreach program to be able to meet the needs of people. So if we look at safety, health, and housing, those are 3 areas which require additional spending. I'd like to associate myself with the comments of both Senator Williams and Councilman Reed with respect to the range of potential here if we organize all the resources that are available. I indicated in a call before this forum started that I would have to leave at 6.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've got to cut you off.
And so this will conclude my participation in this, but not conclude my participation in being an advocate for homeless people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is a 1-minute question. What do you see as the role of policing in regards to people experiencing homelessness? Candidate Jones.
Thank you so much for this question. You know, this goes right to what I discussed before. And as mayor, the creation of a mobile crisis unit. They're already doing this across the country right now. And not only should police show up, but also you need to have mental health experts. You have to have trauma experts. I just want people to get out of this idea that the unsheltered is this one group of people. It really isn't. It really isn't. And I think the key is creating a better communication and coordination with organizations like LMM. You have Nora over here in our neighborhood who can really assist us with this problem. But when it comes to police have to be trained. to deal with these issues. Everything doesn't have to go to pulling out your gun, right? But you have to have the right people who are there. And as mayor, we're going to make sure that we create a mobile crisis unit. And what this unit will do is that not only when you call 911 will police show up, but those who are trained to deal with the segment of this segment of the population.
Okay, thank you so much. Candidate DeBello.
Thank you. Yeah, homeless individuals are not threatening people. So unarmed, whatever the need may be, right? We do have to go to a co-responder model. We do have to hire more social workers, substance abuse and mental health professionals, code enforcers. Our RTA officers need to be unarmed. We just need to guide individuals where they need to be, right? We've lost in a lot of negotiations here over the years, and with a lot of legislation going back the last 400 years to incarcerate who we incarcerate at the rate that we incarcerate them. So we want to look at the muni misdemeanor code, right? Loitering, we don't want that on the books, right? Things like marijuana, fair enforcement. We got to do income-based rides for public transit, right? It's not a crime to want to get from point A to point B. Frankly, that's how we start getting out of this trend of homelessness, by getting people to the jobs they need to be. So co-responder model, no armed response. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Candidate Bibb.
Got to fundamentally rethink what policing should look like in this city. I believe that effective law enforcement and real social justice and accountability are two sides of the same coin. We can do both. So as mayor, I want to do a couple of things. Number one, I want to add a fourth option to 911 so that we related to mental health. So we do have the right response for the right recall, and we got to better train our dispatch agents and our call centers to triage these calls appropriately, working with organizations like the Adams Board. That is essential. The other thing I want to do, as Ross mentioned, is we need to truly have a co-responder model of policing in the city. We did a pilot program in 2016 in the 2nd District. We found that roughly 37% of the calls didn't demand an armed response for 2 armed cops. And it shows you that every call doesn't require a police response. But also think it's important to change the culture of our police department. That's why I'm proud to support the Safe Cleveland Ballot Initiative, because it's going to make sure that the community has a seat at the table. And as mayor, I'm willing to share power with the people to ensure we get that culture change, because that's important and critical to build that trust, to ensure that every community is safe and secure.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you. So the first thing I would do is expand the co-responder program that Cleveland currently has in place. I believe right now it's from 3 to 8 p.m. and only on certain days of the week. That needs to be expanded to 24 hours and 7 days a week, number one. Number two, as many of my co-candidates have said, having social workers, mental health advocates, and others who understand how to deal with people who have certain issues is very important. So making sure they are coming out to calls that come in to help address the issue. Number three, we need to put back community policing. It's very important, because when you have community policing in place, those individuals who are policing the communities by walking up and down the street, knowing the residents, they know what's happening on the ground every day, and they can learn how to assess and how to address the issue. And then finally, I would say more training, and training on how to handle when you're dealing with people with homeless issues, and training on what resources are available for people in the community. Let's just say that some of the co-responders couldn't show up because they were on another call. The police department and those individuals who show up should know where to go. Where's the nearest homeless shelter? Where can they be housed overnight? Where do we go so that we can call the family members or somebody who can help them out? So those are the things that I believe we should be doing. And what we should not be doing is taking those individuals to jail, because that is where a lot of people end up that are homeless.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Reed.
Could you repeat the question again? Because it got.
Sure, no problem. What do you see as the role of policing in regards to people experiencing homelessness?
Well, I think that if we start looking at public safety is from the public health lens that I've said from the beginning, then we will look at the reduction of police as it relates to the homeless community. I mean, when you look at the aspect that we send police officers to every single call that comes across 911. And if you look at the situation, when you send police, then they can't not stop being police officers. Let's be clear, okay? So that's why I've advocated looking at public safety from the public health lens. If you have advocates in the community that are walking the beat, walking the community, walking the neighborhood, they know, as Senator Williams just said, where are the facilities to help the people in the community? So that's why I've advocated time and time again, we need to start looking at this issue of public safety from the public health lens, first and foremost. If we do that, then your question when it comes to policing for the homeless becomes diminished simply because we're looking at it from a different lens and not looking at it from the criminal justice lens.
Okay, thank you so much. Candidate Kelly.
Thank you. Calls for service involving a homeless person generally don't require a police response. Oftentimes, if you look at the calls for service that comes in, it involves somebody aggressively approaching, talking, possibly urinating on a public sidewalk. But if you think about that, both the caller and the person and the homeless person, nobody wins in that situation. That is not a situation where either party is winning. We need to take a different response and make sure that we are doing more. And we have taken some steps towards that. The Downtown Services Unit does meet with Frontline Services. Frontline Services has been doing this work for decades, and they do a great job. And I think we really need to commend them. There are tools there. We need to scale up the tools that we have. We need to improve the relationship between Division of Police and especially in the Downtown Service Unit and the providers such as Frontline Services and those that do know how to deal with these positions. With these situations, there's no. It's very difficult to sort out from the call what the exact response can be, but we need to do a better job and we need to figure out how to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. This is a 2-minute question, so you have a little more time here. Tenants are repeatedly denied housing in Cleveland because of past criminal justice involvement, their source of income, low or no credit scores, their eviction history, or simply not being the housing provider's top candidate. This can lead the tenant to lose hundreds of dollars in application fees and contribute to an extended time in shelter. As mayor, what would you do to reduce these barriers for individuals seeking stable, long-term housing? Candidate DeBello.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we start with the 3 pieces of legislation that is on most of our minds, right? We want to continue with right to counsel, not just for those with kids. We want to do pay to stay. We want to do source of income. The banning the box, right? The stigma. These are things that they really do set people back. These evictions and these trickle down, effects of getting evicted are just crushing us. So we need funding to expand, repair and expand shelters. As I said earlier, with the Q deal, right, we were supposed to get a bunch of beds. Now I think the plan is 70 more beds. That's just not enough. We need to tie together city services and partnerships, right? So just like Edwin's plus, right? In all industries, we want kind of dormitory training with pay work opportunities. And if you're a homeless family, right, you want a work opportunity for the adults, right, with transportation access, maybe even food provided, right, and a partnership with like a daycare or, daycares in whatever location, whatever part of the city we're talking about. So I think this is a multifaceted approach, but it's going to take a lot of A, legislation and a lot of B, partnerships. Again, we've seen with Edwin, him helping to attack the Brandon, helping to attack the stigma and put people to work and get them on the right track. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bibb.
I've seen this issue in my own life. Seeing both my uncles go to jail, come back home. They were both at Ariana House and had a hard time finding a house to stay in, hard time finding a job. And that pain is real. And it could really undermine your confidence to really try to get that second chance that you deserve after you pay your debt to society. And it's important that at the city level, we look at what are the structural barriers we can eradicate to make sure that, my uncles don't experience what they experienced when they came back from prison. I think the first thing we got to do is, expand more permanent supportive housing and affordable housing for residents in the city of Cleveland so they can get that second chance they deserve. We could target some of our ARP money related to that next year and look at that as a major priority. The other thing we got to do is, really think hard about how do we have more expungement clinics across our city and make it continuous so that folks know that they can get some of their records expunged and get the fresh start they deserve. And the other thing I would say is, the next mayor really has to be very bold in how they use the bully pulpit of that office to examine the entire supply chain of what's happening in our criminal justice system right now. You look at the issues with the county jail, that's a major issue. We got to defund prisons and invest in mental health services and invest in good paying jobs and invest in economic opportunity for our community. That needs to be our key priority. And that would be my vision as the next mayor of Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you. There are a couple of things. Number one, as a state senator, I have championed several pieces of legislation to help people expunge their criminal record. The fact of the matter is, though, that it is very hard to expunge your record because of all the paperwork, the legalities in place. And so, number one, I think the mayor should have a clinic that we have set up on a regular basis to help people who have a criminal record get their record expunged. I participate in several of these events a year to help people who don't even know that we've expanded what can be expunged in the city of Cleveland. So having that will take away one of the barriers. Number two, working directly with Legal Aid Society who do this on a regular basis. And you talked about the ARP money. Perhaps we should put more funding into Legal Aid Society who do this for a living because they are really underfunded and trying to help so many people. Number three, the city, we all just talked about affordable housing in the city of Cleveland, right? And so the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, as well as the city, offers several incentives to build affordable housing in the community. We often say we want to make sure some of that is workforce housing. So perhaps we should tell folks that if you want to get the incentives from the city of Cleveland and work with the state of Ohio to do the same, then you need to be hiring people who have questionable credit history, past rental history problems, and criminal justice. And then finally, I would offer incentives to homeowners who are willing to rent to people who have these problems. And listen, people who have backgrounds that make it hard for them to get jobs and rent properties, they are probably going to be some of the best tenants that you will find. Why? Because it's so hard for them to get a place to live. And so I would work with homeowners and offer them additional incentives to rent to individuals who have these type of problems in our community. This is an issue that can be solved. Credit repair can be solved. Most of the criminal backgrounds can be solved. And we cannot hold people accountable for what they have done in the past for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Reed.
Thank you very much for this question. And with all due respect to my candidate colleagues, everything that's been said thus far has been reactive. So let's put the issue on the table. And I'm quite sure my brother and my friend Brashear Jones would appreciate this. Let's talk about race. Because when you first talk about the individuals, when you're saying, well, we're going to do something about expungement, and we're going to do something about the juvenile justice system, these people have gone to jail. And the vast majority are going to jail because of their race. and because they're either Latino, Black, or poor. So let's look at the issue right now. One of the biggest issues that's been on the front of our newspaper is you got a white lady who stole money from a school system, who had $200,000, okay, over a period of time, who got probation. So she gets to stay at home. She gets to keep her home or roof over her head. While the Black lady who stole $40,000 has to go to jail for 18 months. So now you've given her a criminal record. So if we look at the issue of who is going to jail, who is being sentenced, who is now leaving their home, who can't pay the bail, we need to be looking at bail reform. We need to be looking at why are these people who are Latino and they're Black and they're poor, why are they going to jail while the rich white person doesn't go to jail and they get to stay at home? So with all due respect to my colleagues, I want to go, as I've said, and I will continue to say, I want to go to the beginning of the line. I want to be proactive as it relates to the criminal justice system and stop sending people to jail for non-violent offenses so they can stay at home, take care of their families, be able to give back to society. And I want to take this race out of the criminal justice system because it is there, it is an apparent, and you can see what just happened over the last week, and everybody's in an uproar about it, but it happens every single day if you're Latino, Black, or poor in this country.
Great, thank you. Candidate Kelly.
Thank you. When we were working towards the right to counsel and eviction prevention, there was another tool that we started, but we need to expand, and that is the ability to seal eviction records. So it is very obvious that if somebody's been evicted, there's a public record, and that's often part of a search. But oftentimes the case is thrown out, they settle before it is fully adjudicated and the case is dismissed. But even a dismissed case will stay on the docket. So I think we need to work to make sure that right to seal your record from eviction is expanded. Secondly, I think we need to continue, the governor talked about an expedited pardon program, because so many people, unfortunately, even though the criteria for sealing your record has been expanded recently, sometimes people have one offense outside of that. And it's important that we fully use that tool that's available to seal records, because that is another issue that landlords will look to when they do their background checks. And I'll tell you, of all the legal cases I've taken over my career, the proudest moments are that I had 2 people that I was able to get gubernatorial pardons with, and that was before this expedited process, and it wasn't easy. It's a lot of work. These are some of the tools that we can use. The source of income tool is something that is being looked at Cleveland City Council right now. While there's different issues of enforcement and all, I think we can take the basic step of making sure that people don't advertise no Section 8, no veterans benefits, those things that are discriminatory on the very front end. I don't know exactly where that one's going to land, but it's something that's under active consideration. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Candidate Jones.
Thank you so much, Professor. This has to be my last one as well, as I have to get to the next. But I do want to say thank you so much, and I hope the senator gets that fly, because it's winning right now, I'll tell you. But no, this has been amazing. I really appreciated this topic. Really touches my heart. Professor, and to everyone tuned in, I just want you to see what we have done. When as Justin was talking, I felt he was talking about me, because that's all I've been fighting for. I just did an expungement clinic just a couple weeks ago, rather, at East High School. Over 100 people came out and got their records expunged. Look at how I've spent my CDBG dollars. I gave money to LMM as they built a structure or rehabbed the structure in my neighborhood to help those who are unsheltered. We have to be a city that is focus more on rehabilitation instead of incarceration. In my neighborhood, along in a partnership with the county, we just opened up the first diversion center that will not allow people just to go and get incarcerated, but rehabilitation. And as mayor, or as councilman, you know, there was very few voices that spoke out against the conditions of the Cuyahoga County Jail. I was on the front line. So even as an elected official, I've maintained my activism. And as mayor, I am going to create an Office of Civil Rights. And this Office of Civil Rights will assist with helping those who have been wrongfully charged, overly convicted, as well as assist those so that we really attack the issue of recidivism. How do we deal with this? We want to have more expungement clinics. Every month, I am going to host with legal aid, you know, the Ohio Innocence Project, the Beyond Conviction, right? We're going to hold expungement clinics every single month right in City Hall. This is what stops people from being able to get a home. This is what stops people from being able to get a job because of something that's on their record. I'm going to close right now because Ms. Tucker's been doing a fantastic job on that time. I am a collaborator. I work with people. I've worked with LMM. Talk to LMM and ask them who has been one of their biggest supporters. And I can guarantee you they'll say that Councilman Jones has been of assistance to what we have been trying to accomplish. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about such an amazing topic. And as mayor, as a person who was homeless, my family was homeless, there's very few people who have more of an interest in getting this done. As mayor, I'm going to open up a Department of Homeless Services. This is the key. Bring the experts to the table. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I think we've lost some of the candidates, but that's fine. We'll continue with the remaining folks. This is a 1-minute question. Nationwide, 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ and are 120% more likely to experience homelessness than non-LGBTQ youth. Recognizing this, how would you affirm and prioritize the needs of LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness in our community? Candidate Bibb.
I would just say, you know, one of the questions we had earlier talked about the importance of grounding policymaking in the lived experience of every resident in the city of Cleveland. And that's essential for me as a next mayor. I want to reflect that in my administration and have a liaison dedicated to the LGBTQ community to ensure that we have that on the ground feedback of what's working and what's not working. I love to see the work they're doing at the LGBT Center in Detroit Sherway. That's a safe space for this important population of our city to feel loved, to feel welcomed, to make sure we are an inclusive community. Also love the great work that we're seeing at West 117th Studios as well. So we got to do a better job as a city of investing in those safe places for the LGBTQ community so that they can thrive and live their best life in the city of Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Williams.
Thank you. As Mayor Frank Jackson has done already, I would definitely continue to have a liaison at the City of Cleveland to make sure that the City of Cleveland is addressing any issue that comes up with the LGBTQI+ community. And I would also be working with the Stonewall Democrats as well as other organizations to address these issues. And if it's about the issue of safe housing, then we need to make sure that we have housing that these youth can go to on a regular basis, whether they are from out of town or in the city of Cleveland. But just finding property owners who are willing to allow us to host these individuals until we can find them a safe place to go.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Reed.
Well, what I would do is I would build upon the program that I started in Union Miles. I would build upon the program under Habitat for Humanity, that I would take these young people and I would stop the process that is happening throughout the county that's tearing down good homes. And I would put these young people to work, teaching them how to be carpenters, how to be painters, how to be roofers, how to be landscapers, and help them to renovate these homes in our community. And once they renovate the homes in our community, the same way Habitat for Humanity does it with families, we put them in those homes. We can take these vacant houses, vacant structures in our community. We could teach these young people how to go about and get a skill. And then after they finish renovating these homes and these buildings, we could put them into these homes and these buildings the same way I did in Union Miles. in the same way Habitat for Humanity has done. These are programs that we need to be doing across the city, because once these young people come and learn how to be carpenters and painters and landscapers, now they have a skill that they can go out and be able to take care of themselves, take care of their families, and give back to society.
Okay, thank you. Peter DeBello.
Thank you, Professor. I would certainly do the cabinet positions and liaisons and partner with our partners like at Detroit Shoreway, but I think this gets to a much bigger problem, right? Like we're #1 in the nation for trans murders. Last night somebody said, I'm afraid to call the police. There's not a social safety net here more than anywhere else, right? So we have to publicize the fact that we are a welcoming city, right? June is Pride Month. We're going to have to terminate who we're going to have to terminate, right? We need to make sure we're not having any of these types of lawsuits in city departments, right? No tolerance for this type of language until people feel comfortable telling you, that they need help. We're not going to even be in a position to help them. So this gets the DNA of, I think, all city employees and city policy and how we market ourselves.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question. This is a 1-minute question. It's pretty straightforward. If you were elected and accomplished one thing to address housing insecurity and homelessness, what would it be and how would you achieve it? Candidate DeBello, you're back on.
Can you repeat it one more time?
I
Professor?
absolutely can. If you are elected and accomplished one thing to address housing insecurity and homelessness, what would it be and how would you achieve it?
Start the public bank, right, with the ARPA dollars, and convince Secretary Fudge to begin doing transit-oriented public housing builds.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bibb.
I would say follow what cities like Houston have done and truly have a housing first policy with a direct voucher program that's city led, city managed with the right partners in our community to make sure that regardless of how long you've been homeless, you can live in a safe, affordable home that gives you dignity.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Williams.
I would work directly with developers to build more permanent supportive housing. I would then work to match individuals who are homeless with some of the $5,000 or $6,000 jobs, thousand jobs we have within the city to give them a job with a living wage, and then help them get set up in permanent housing in the city of Cleveland.
Okay, thank you. And Candidate Reed.
I would do two things. First of all, I would work to ensure that we have good wages, because insecurity is about not being able to pay my rent. And then secondly, I would work with my good friend and my mentor, Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, who is now Secretary Fudge, to ensure that we have good, affordable, decent housing here in the city of Cleveland. And I would do those things right away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's all we have for today. Thank you to all the candidates and audience for joining us. We will be in touch with the candidates between now and September 14th and encourage all viewers to make sure they are registered to vote, as the deadline for the mayoral primary is Monday. And with that, we'll close out our forum. A recording will be available on YouTube later this week and via LMM's Cleveland Facebook page. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
The recording has stopped.
Huzzah!